Hey guys, it's Julia and welcome back to my channel, and for today's video I'm going to be doing my April reading wrap-up talking about the books that I read in the month of April. Before I am asked, I will just state that I did cut my hair and I did get my braces off, so that's new. But without further ado, I had a great reading month and I want to talk about all these books with you guys because I did a readathon. It was a good time. Reading went really well. I really liked the books I read this month, so let's just jump right into it. First up here I have Whiskey Words in a Shovel Volume 3, which this is a poetry collection all about love for the most part, and loss and despair, all the lovely things that poetry tend to be about. But this is such a great modern poetry collection. It's actually a trilogy, so I would just highly recommend these. They're super quick reads. They're honestly some of my favorite poetry collections. They're absolutely amazing, so I'd highly recommend it, and I gave it 4 to 5 stars. Next up here I have another poetry collection, and that is Stuff I've Been Feeling Lately by Alicia Cook. This is another poetry collection, but in this one, actually half of it is like, the first half is like the poems, and then the second half is like those poems, but like with blackout poetry. So that's different. It was okay, like it was good, but some of it was just kind of it was repetitive at times. But like, if you're into poetry, I still suggest it. It's just not my highest recommendation, but I give it 3.5 out of 5 stars. Next up here I read The Inexplicable Logic of My Life by Benjamin O'Leary Science. This is about Sal and his loving Mexican-American family and his gay father, and it's a contemporary novel, and it's all about Sal and his best friend, and Sal dealing with issues such as grief. And it's just a really interesting read, and he also wrote Aristotle and Dante, so like I want to read it because of that, and I like some of his other works as well. But this one wasn't as good as his other works. I was a little let down by the writing. Like, it was still very beautiful, but it wasn't as like gorgeous as it usually is, in my opinion. But it was a good read. It didn't need to be this long, but I think it dealt with grief in a really respectful way, and a really intense way, like it should be. I did do a full-length book review on this, so if you do want to check out my full-length thoughts for like 6 minutes, then I'll link it up on the screen for you if you want. But I ended up giving this a 3.25 out of 5 stars. Next up here I have Thanks for the Trouble by Tommy Wallich. What this book is about a boy who's very introverted. He writes in his journal all the time. He's also mute, so this is how he communicates. He writes in his journal, and then someone's going to write back in the journal. That's how he communicates. And he's in a hotel lobby. He should be at school, but he's not. And he's in a hotel lobby, and he starts writing this story about this girl that he sees that's like, looks a bit older, but she's like really like majestic looking, and he's just really interested in her, and he writes this story, but he leaves his notebook and she finds it, and she's like, was this story written about me? And it's like, it spans over like a day or two, and it's about them and their what goes down with them. And this does have trigger warnings for suicide, so keep that in mind before picking this up. But it was a decent read. I found it was super quick. It was super engaging. I couldn't put it down. It was one of those books that I just like flew through and really enjoyed. But I ended up giving this a 3.5 out of 5 stars. I would definitely suggest it if you're interested in picking up a contemporary novel like this one. Next up here I read Under Rose-Tainted Skies by Louise Gornell, which this book has trigger warnings for OCD, agoraphobia, depression, anxiety. I feel like there's something else that I'm forgetting, but I'll link my Goodreads down below, and I include all the trigger warnings there. But this book follows 17-year-old Nora, who has agoraphobia, and she is, if you don't know what agoraphobia is, basically a terrible fear of leaving your house. Like, it's legit, like it's a very serious thing, and it's a very hard thing as well. And it's about Nora, who doesn't leave her home, and it's about this boy who kind of moves in down the street, and he comes knocking on the door, and like he wonders why she doesn't go outside, and like there's all this situations going on. It's about her dealing with her illnesses and her her learning to cope with those illnesses. And it was just fantastic. If you're interested in mental illness contemporary, definitely pick this up. It was super important, and I think it just sent the message, like it just portrayed itself so well. And I did a full-length book review, so if you want to check out more of my thoughts, I will link that up on the screen for you. But I ended up giving this 4 to 5 stars. Next book I read was a super exciting one, and that is Geekerella by Ashley Poston. This book is a new release, and it's basically I read this in one sitting. Like, it was fantastic. Like, I could not put this thing down for the life of me, and I just loved it so much. It's such good quality too. Like, it's a heavy book because the pages are thick, and like yes. A Cinderella retelling that's very much about fandoms, and there's this girl who, our main character, who loves this series called Starfield, and it can be like similar to Star Trek or Star Wars. Like those things are also mentioned in this book, but it's about her, and she has a blog where she writes about this fandom, and then she goes to this like expo, and it's just super interesting. I loved it so much. I loved the romance in it, and I loved the writing, the simplicity of it, and it was just like funny. It was quick. It was so great. I've never read a retelling I don't think that I love this much, so I definitely check this out. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. Next up here I have another new release, and that is The Upside of Unrequited by Becky Albertalli. This book is about 17-year-old Molly, who's had about 28 unrequited crushes, and she's never told any of them that she likes them, so like she's never been rejected, but she's never been with anyone either. Basically with Molly, her twin sister is lesbian, and she's very outgoing, and she's very like, you should get a boyfriend, blah blah blah, and their friends and her sister are trying to hook her up with someone, and they stumble upon this one guy that she's interested in, and she meets another guy at work, and it kind of is sort of like a love triangle, but not really. It's very minimal, like no, but it's just about the romance, and it's about Molly, and it has trigger warnings for anxiety as well. I believe it has trigger warnings for anxiety if I remember correctly. But it was just super great. It was funny. It was adorable. It was like a delight to read. The diversity in this book, like, highly recommend. It took me by surprise. Like, I just loved it a lot. I gave it 4.25, which if you've been here, you know I don't get ratings that high very often, so I was just super happy with this book. Can't stop looking at my teeth in the viewfinder. It looks so weird, but anyways. Next up here, I read The First Time She Drowned by Carrie Kletter, and this book is another mental illness contemporary, which also has a lot of trigger warnings. So if you're triggered by a lot of things, make sure you look into the trigger warnings for this book, but I'll have them like on the screen or like down below or something like that. About Casey and her struggles with her own self, her mental health struggles. It's also about her past, her mother, her family. We go between past and present, and she was in a mental hospital at one point, so she got out, and it's about her dealing with that and the people she met there. It's a really complicated book, but it has beautiful writing and beautiful, just poetic writing. It just did such a great job of going between past and present. I thought that was fantastic. We basically follow her experiences in college as well, so there's a lot of things going on in this book, and it's just super fantastic, and I loved reading it. Definitely a good mental illness contemporary. I would highly recommend picking this up, and I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. And at this point, it was the 29th of the month, and the Dewey's 24 readathon hit, which I was super excited for. So I read 5 books during that readathon, so let's talk about those. Oh, I just realized I read the rest of The First Time She Drowned, like the last 200 pages during that readathon, so that counts too. But anyways, the other 4. I read Whiskey Words in a Shovel Volume 1, which if you're like, didn't you just say Volume 3? Yeah, I read Volume 2 and Volume 3 before this, because like this one like you could not find, so this is like a revised edition that like just released. So I read this. This was fantastic. I love this. I would highly recommend this. Yeah, definitely check it out. I love these poetry collections. They are just inspiring and enlightening and beautiful, and it's like this author is writing it to you, and it's just fantastic. But I ended up giving this 4 out of 5 stars. Here I read George by Alex Gino, which is just I just love this book so much. This is about a girl named George who, to the world, she appears as a boy, but she knows inside that she's a girl. So it's a middle grade book that deals with a transgender main character, and it was absolutely amazing. Basically, she wants to play Charlotte in their play of Charlotte's Web. They won't let her because she looks like a boy. So it's about her and what she does about that, and her friends, and her coming to terms with this thing that she doesn't understand. But again, it's middle grade. It was fantastic. I loved it. I think it's so important. I think it should be required reading in school. I think you should read it if you haven't. I was just generally surprised by this. I loved it. I wanted to read it for so long. It's one of those books in the bookstore where I grab it, go to the cash, but I never buy it. I just kind of like leave it somewhere, or I like almost buy it, and then I'm like, no, it's okay. But I finally got it, and I loved it a lot, mostly because the paperback came out and it was super cheap, but I just loved it. Like, I would buy the hardcover. I gave it 4 stars. It was great. Next up here, I read Brokeback Mountain by Annie Prolix. Anyways, this I didn't know much about, but I saw it at Book Outlet, and all I knew was gay cowboys, so I was like, yes please. And that's what it's about. Basically, it's about this bond between these 2 cowboys, and I didn't like it at all. It was the shortest thing, and we barely went into depth about the relationship. Like, I feel like we just barely scratched the surface on their bond. Like, I feel like they could have been like strangers. Like, I didn't feel this connection between them. There was obviously like sexual chemistry, but there wasn't like, I don't know how to explain it. I just didn't like it, and I was really sad about that because I thought I would like it. The setting was pretty. I love Western kind of books, but like, it just wasn't good. It was just felt underdeveloped, and the writing wasn't special, so I just kind of was like, oh, and I gave it 2.5 out of 5 stars. Last but not least, I read Good Morning Midnight by Jean Reese, I hope, I don't know. This book is a classic that is set in 1930, and it's about this woman who is going through her mental health struggles, and she's in Paris, and she's going to bars, and it's like one of those books that it follows her around Paris. And this book was okay. I was super excited to read this because there's this quote from this book that's like talking about killing yourself, and I read that online, and I heard this was a good classic, so I thought, I'm super excited to read that. And it was good, but it wasn't great. I had some issues, like we went between past and present, and that just got super confusing. Like, I'm usually pretty good at following that kind of thing, but this just got really confusing because one minute you'd be in England and then you're in Paris, and it's like, where am I? And it was like, then sometimes she'd talk about her past, but I'm like, wait, is that happening now? Because like some things were happening now, and I was so confused. Plus the main character got really annoying because I swear she cried like every other page. Like, I get you're sad, man, but please don't tell me you're crying every other page. It just got on my nerves a bit. And then I'm like, why don't you seek help? And I guess, I get it's that time period, but like, no one even like, some people suspected things, but like, she didn't tell anyone her struggles. And I don't know, that just bothered me. Like, I understand it, but it's like, I don't know. And I love the setting of Paris. I didn't care for the characters though. I really didn't care what happened to them. I was just like, yeah, right. And it just let me down. The first half I enjoyed better than the second, but the book does have trigger warnings for suicide and depression, so keep that in mind before picking this book up. But I just thought it was okay, and I gave it 2.75 out of 5 stars. And there you guys have it. Those were all the books that I read in the month of April. Let me know your thoughts and opinions down below. I'd love to hear your thoughts, and let me know if you've read these books or what you read this month and all that jazz. Let me know down below, and feel free to check me out on Instagram, Tumblr, Pinterest, Goodreads. What else do I have? Instagram, Twitter, yeah, all that shit. It's down below if you care. But I'll see y'all very soon with a new video. And thank you so much for watching. Bye.
He holds the gun against my head. I close my eyes and bang, I am dead. I know he knows.